Hey, folks, welcome back again. This week, we are going to be covering things that are mobile. We're talking about what you need to know when you're thinking about building multi-platform mobile applications. So we're going to be spending a little time chatting about the different ways you can build mobile apps. You know that there are many different ways, and Meteor is just one of the ways that you can do that. It does make your life a little easier. We're going to talk about not really spending a lot of time chatting about or evangelizing why you use Meteor, but talking about the real practical things that you run into as you go about building these things. What are some of the challenges that you might face? What are some of the unspoken things that you might have to encounter if you're doing it for the first time, or if you're dealing with a client that is not quite familiar about what it takes to get it done? So we'll chat a little bit about that today. That's going to be the main focus of our discussion. Let me think about what else we've got. I think we have also a special birthday note going out there today. You're going to hear that right at the top of the hour here. And there is a Hacktoberfest surprise. And finally, Jay Küster is here with us today. Küster is a little bit of a tease today, and he's gonna tell you what he's teasing about. And with that, I'm going to get right into it and tell you that you are watching the 57th episode. Is it the 57th? Let's make sure. No, it's the 58th episode of This Week in MeteorJS, a weekly newscast of the MeteorJS Dispatches podcast. My name is Alim Gafar. I am streaming to you live from New York City.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dvorak, aka Storyteller.cz, coming to you live from Prague.
Hello, and my name is Küster, streaming to you live from Germany.
And with that, as we always do, we're going to get right into the news.
Yes, so let me take over and give you today something very different news item to start, because today is the birthday of CEO of Meteor Software, Fred. And we want to say happy birthday from the MeteorJS Dispatches team.
Yay! Just pretend that these are candles. You got to blow them out. All right.
Okay, and with that, I'm giving back to Jan and give you something more of the other news.
Yeah.
All right. I am starting here with a post, or you could say an article that I found during my research for my upcoming talk in Japan from Solvio, which titles itself as the real story behind Meteor Apollo GraphQL. Very ambitious title, but besides talking about a lot about Apollo, there's a lot of talk about the Meteor and how Apollo GraphQL came out to be out of Meteor. And I think there are gonna, for today, two big things to mention. The back then a Meteor development group team was looking to kind of satisfy the needs of big corporation where you have thousands of developers working on different things, and across massive organizations, and kind of get around shortcomings of the Meteor could say data system, because Apollo began its life as Meteor 2 data system, and it kind of then merged, kind of evolved, using GraphQL into what it is today. And a second, which kind of goes to general issue, I would say, why there was the entire team shifted and kind of abandoned Meteor, you could say, was because there was also dissatisfaction with how Cordova failed kind of capture any of the AAA applications. So they had much bigger hopes for Cordova and Cordova integration, which were not fulfilled. So definitely give this article a read. There's a lot of really interesting information and historical data there. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that.
Just want to give some context to this. Solvio is a company that is run by Sam Hatoum. Sam was very big in the Meteor community for a long time. He was working on testing tools with a few other people, including Adrian Lanning. Solvio has moved on to other things, and so has Sam. And in any case, it was really nice to see that he had taken the time to capture some of the history of Meteor in this interview that he had. I believe it was with Jeff Schmidt, right?
Let's take a look. Yes, Jeff Schmidt.
Yeah. All right. Really, really cool stuff. Okay. What do we got next after that? Are we going right to the news?
Let's go to more cool stuff in Journal Meteor News. This one coming from Click Hopley.
Yes.
So
I think
Jan,
this is
take it away.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So of all you people who were waiting this for a long time, there is finally a new beta out for the fast render final version 5, compatible for Meteor 3. And as we always encourage everyone to install the beta versions, please do it and give us feedback, because it's really important to get feedback beyond the own application use cases someone can use to test. We also need info from the field. And Kelly has been working on this. I think he worked alone on this for now. And but we could also, I know that fast render is definitely dependent for many other packages, which is why this is a very crucial step here. And this is also why it's really important to get feedback on, because we don't want to break things for everyone else. We want to make things work. So check it out. And I think with this, there are things like server-side rendering for React becoming possible again for Meteor 3. And then we can finally be on that list of these super capable server-side component frameworks and so on. Is that right?
I think that was a requirement that the that the React team was claiming that we needed to be able to do, right? Show that we were using all of their features.
Yeah.
To be included in their list of recommended platforms. So,
but I don't want to get too deep into that, because today it's a different topic, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So listen, folks, if you like what we're doing, and I think many of you do, because we do see you hitting that like button, keep hitting it, please, because that helps promote our program to the YouTube algorithm so that it will show up on searches. And yeah, just keep hitting the like button. By the way, I do want to just say that last week's episode is probably the fastest viewed episode that we've ever had. And we're still trying to figure out why that is exactly, but we appreciate it. And it's also the fastest viewed in terms of the amount of total watch hours that we've seen hit. In a week, we've almost hit, probably the high point of what a lot of our other episodes take months to get to. So again, we're going to be looking into that further to figure out what it is that you guys really liked about it. We're trying to replicate some of that this week. So hit the like button. Let us know that you want us to keep doing this. All right, Jan.
Yes, let's jump to more Meteor news. This time we have Denis Perov, aka Images. He has taken on this issue which we have still unresolved, that there's like a new way how you can in npm export from your packages, and that's pretty much you put all the definitions into package.json export fields, and right now Meteor does not support that. So Denis has taken on to kind of look into it and see if he can fix that or add that functionality in, and he is documenting his journey in the GitHub discussion day by day. Right now we have day 1, 2, and 3. So hopefully he'll be back on this. So if you want to kind of support him and or maybe help him in some way, definitely check this out and be part of the journey. And going next, we have another interesting pull request from Nacho, which at first may not really tell you much, given the title, which says docs Meteor methods call async promises and resolve type options. But it's actually quite a helpful documentation and kind of comparing what's the difference between methods in Meteor 2 and Meteor 3. So it should be, or it will be, part of docs once Meteor 3.0.4 is released. And it might, I think, open for some of you some more options if you are using the methods on the client. So definitely check this out. And next, we have also a blog post announcement about Meteor issues for Hacktoberfest, how they get started. So once we open up the blog here, besides the usual, there is a list of issues that you can look into. Also, for the first one, I have already done the preliminary work. There is a PR from me that you can kind of jump on and expand on, because I did like only the bare minimum of trying to understand that in my, was it Monday or last week? Probably Monday, when I did my Hacktoberfest stream. So check that out. And I think that will be it for this week. Just two last quick mention. Once again, Hacktoberfest here is, so join in to get some cool virtual badges and potentially some other goodies. And Meteor 3.0.4 has reached its release candidate stage. So release candidate 0 is out, and there are just only a few little things that will be probably added in before the final release. And then we are off to Meteor 3.1, which we'll discuss at another time.
Excellent. Hey, Küster.
Yep.
What should people do?
So first, before talking about what should people do, I would like to talk about another reason for celebration, and that is we hit the 300 subscribers mark, and that's really great. Thanks to you, all of you, and everyone telling their folks and friends and everyone to subscribe to this channel. So please keep doing this. Please keep subscribing, get the latest updates, and help us to reach the 500 to get a YouTube partnership, and then we can grow this community even bigger.
Yeah, and you know what? Join the Kelly Challenge in terms of watching the videos.
Yes.
That's some suggestion, right?
Yeah.
About putting the playlist on in the background and let it run. So if you can do that, that will help us get into the partner program, and that would be pretty awesome for us. So, and you might learn something interesting there too while you're at it. I am looking for something else here. Are we so what should they do now? I'm sorry. Oh, yes, you already asked them to. Oh,
No
my
worries.
my brain has gone on vacation, But this now is a segment we did last week. We're doing it again, where we're getting into a significant discussion about some technology or an aspect of Meteor, or actually just something in the related space of developing software, which all of you are here because you do that, or you have an interest in it in some way, whether as a business owner or as a software developer yourself. This week, we are talking about building multi-platform mobile applications. And in general, I think you all know that you can build them with Meteor. Meteor offers you a number of different ways that you can approach this, right? You can use Cordova, which has been a little bit maligned in earlier discussion here from the article that was written before. You can do it with React Native, or there are other ways that you could do it. You can build responsive web applications that have them augmented with some PWA. There are different ways of doing this. I'm going to swing back to my notes because I tend to ramble off sometimes. I think you all know that. So there is a section in the guide that will take you to information on how to go about building your applications, right? And so you can go right there. There is very good and very useful information. But the point we're making here is that that is not the end-all be-all. It's a starting point. And what we're going to go over here are some of the experiences that these two developers have had in building mobile applications from each of these different viewpoints, each of these different vantage points. Just want to mention, by the way, that in an earlier episode that we did this summer, which was also on mobile, that is episode 42. So if you haven't watched it before, you might want to go check it out. There is a point where I think it's either Fred or Nacho, who's on the show with us, mentions that they're thinking of replacing Cordova with technology called Capacitor, which is an outshoot of Ionic, another competing, excuse me, option for building mobile applications. So there are interesting things happening in the mobile space with Meteor, conversations going on, thoughts. Make sure that your voice gets heard, is what I'm saying here. And with that, I'm going to turn this over back to Küster again, and he's going to give us a little bit of history and his own experience working with React Native and now with PWAs, ideally with responsive web apps. And maybe he'll point out some of the challenges and issues that you might encounter along the way so that you don't feel alone if you do. And if he has some solutions to them or some ways to offer a path forward, you know, he might be able to offer them there too.
Yes, thank you, Alim. So
yeah.
Maybe I start off with PWAs, because I actually started with creating only web apps with Meteor and Blaze. And I wanted to provide a mobile experience. And in contrast to our later former mobile episode, today it's a little bit more about multi-platform paradigm from one code base. And here is the trade-off. Usually, if you want to build a real native mobile app, you will not only use your one code base, but you have to enrich the code base. Or in case of React Native, you have to even build another client. And in the past, I think when I started around 2018, I wanted to provide some kind of a mobile experience for users to have some kind of a desktop-like application. Yeah, you know, which usually you can use with Meteor Desktop, but I didn't want to fiddle with this whole Electron extra code. So you can do that. You can use Meteor Desktop, by the way, also maintained by Storyteller. And you can create a native desktop application, but I didn't want to do that. And I also wanted to have my users being able to use my apps on the mobile. And at that time, I used Bootstrap, and then as a responsive CSS system to create this highly responsive design. And then I created all my app screens mobile first, and then make them PWA capable. And by the way, regarding this PWA capable, I created an article on DevTO at that time, how to transform any Meteor app to PWA. And I tried this week and it's still working. By the way, there is an up-to-date PWA kit. So if you never heard of PWA, let me give you a very quick introduction. PWA is basically your web app being capable to be installed on a user system and being progressively enhanced by certain features. Most core item is the service worker. And we have an up-to-date repository for this service worker and the web manifest, which you also need for your browser to detect that this app is PWA capable. And that is also provided by John Morrow. And thanks for that. This is really great. So Jan, if you just might open the service worker JS file, just to give a very brief example, this service, what a service worker is, this is just a file that defines for the browser how to handle certain events on the networking level. So there is some data flowing in, flowing out, something is fetched, and there are some events, and it's basically about caching. It's like a caching layer, and this is the foundation to make your app offline capable as well. And this is also a very important feature on these PWAs. And this combined with a responsive design, that was the key idea for me to make an app multi-platform mobile without native code. That was really important at that time. And you can easily install any PWA on your mobile as a start screen. It's just it will look like an app, but it's just a mobile app. There was one trade-off, and that is you are limited with the PWA in some features regarding the accessing sensors and the technology of your device. This is where I went into React Native, and then I started, okay, this is the trade-off I have to make. I have to write another client just for the mobile apps, for the native mobile apps, to build to provide this user experience we really want. But from my experience, for most of the time, for most websites I'm doing where user experience is not specifically crafted for the mobile, but you want to deliver them on mobile anyway, going the PWA way is a really good way. And depending on what people think about, maybe this will become also an essential part of future Meteor app skeletons, because the extra effort is not that big and the benefits are really great. There's also just one last thing to summarize this PWA thing. There is a huge guide on web.dev about learning PWAs. Web.dev is one of these learning platforms sponsored by Google, or it's basically owned by Google. And they also promote, of course, their PWA development tools called Workbox. So it's a soft vendor login, but you can still use them. They're really great. And I think everyone who's interested in PWAs should definitely read on this and check this out, because this is a real alternative if you don't want to extend your code base too much, but keep it some kind of multi-platform compatible. So this is the best trade-off if you're not want to build an extra app. But keep in mind, there will be features that you only have on your mobile device, on a native mobile app, when it comes to accessing the mobile device on a deeper level. And for that, that's the workbox. So there are also recipes, by the way. So for caching strategies and for certain use cases, this has specific recipes you can try to use and incorporate in your service worker. And I encourage everyone to check these resources out. And if you can't follow up anymore, just post in the forums, ask for help, and we will be ready to jump into that. And from here, I would like to pass over to Jan, because Jan, our storyteller, has the experience with the thing that I always skipped on my part, and that is Cordova. So, Jan, what's your experience?
Yeah, Cordova experience is, I would say, very much hit and miss. If I was to summarize it, it would be, it works on my machine or it does not. First, I want to really point out to the Cordova, documentation and also guide, which probably a little bit after this, I will be submitting a pull request to update something specific to Ubuntu that I ran into when setting things up. So that's, since last time, many months ago, we've talked about this. That's kind of my biggest update is I managed to get finally through the setup of things. It wasn't actually that difficult once I took the time to actually read a little bit around. So that's with progress. And finally, once you get a little bit, maybe into Cordova or want to kind of start doing more things, it's actually, I do believe it's mentioned here in the documentation, which was a bit of a surprise to me. But you can open, the Cordova project that gets generated in, Android Studio. So you can open it there. I've tried it. It's pretty neat, but I don't have any experience with Android Studio, so I didn't get that much out of it. So if you have any already experience with Android Studio, you can go through there and all that stuff. So benefit through all the benefits of Android Studio. The biggest issue, I've kind of managed to get through it, but sadly, I cannot show you any working Cordova app at this moment because I am stuck with starting app on Android device or an emulator. So that's something that I'll be trying to look probably into in the future. That said, though, as I said, it's very much dependent on your setup and everything. There are quite a few fixes coming in Meteor 3.0.4 for Windows and Cordova. And if you are on Mac, you probably have a bit easier time just because of how much the Google devs and even Meteor developers who oftentimes have Macs themselves have put into it to make sure that works, because that's kind of what's easiest for them to test. So that's that. But in the past, I managed to run on my device Cordova applications as well. There are some specific packages which I should let me quickly find them up for you. Completely forgot about them. They are in a specific different repository. Let's see, called mobile packages. And let me put that into our notes so that we don't forget about them. And there is 3 of them: camera, geolocation, and reload on resume. You actually can use the first 2 in normal web applications as well. Instead of the camera on the phone, it's going to pick up your web camera, and geolocation is going to try to get through your browser geolocation. But if you have it paired with Cordova, there are additional packages that it kind of does under the hood to make sure you can use the native API, and that's kind of the biggest benefit of having Cordova, is that you can access the native APIs through it. That said, it's a bit finicky, so usually once you get it working, you kind of stick with it. And I know quite a few awesome guys, from the cloud devs to beyond that have really now. Not I remember Bart. I think Bart. I don't know. I cannot recall now his family name. Yes, he has also been doing a lot with Cordova from what I remember. So it's definitely, working. That said, kind of going back to the article that I said before, that we opened with about the origins of Apollo GraphQL. The hope for Cordova was that, through that, Meteor can get into the, mobile apps as an era or revolution. Sadly, Cordova didn't end up to being the winning ticket. And I would say, from my experiences with it, it's kind of the mid, or the first step if you want to really get into the App Store, but don't have the resources or don't want to get invest into a full native application. You could say maybe step before that are actually the PWAs as well on that, which I found super interesting. So Cordova is right now maybe a bit undeservedly in a limbo, and so there is a lot of stuff that could be done about it, but I'm not really seeing anything exciting, I would say, coming from the Cordova team
Yeah.
itself, or maybe I'm just not paying enough attention. And that's also why we had last time, and I've confirmed it earlier today also, that the Meteor team is looking in technologies like capacitor and a bunch of few others to integrate better with Meteor. I think the biggest thing kind of looking into technologies like this is to hopefully avoid the pitfalls of Cordova and make it super easy to get started, because right now Cordova installation can be quite a hair-pulling experience.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. I was just kind of, this is a lot of what you're saying is very forward-looking. What about, I think what we want to do here is help educate people that might be thinking about building with these technologies, what the limits are, what the boundaries are in terms of what they might be able to get out of it, so that they don't set their expectations super high about what they can get and then find that they're frustrated because they can't get further, right?
So what will you get out of using Cordova? It's very much similar to if you really get into setting up progressive web apps in detail. The Cordova will give you some of the stuff out of the box. First of all, is once the user installs the application, they don't have to oftentimes download a lot of extra stuff. They're just getting the data, so that speeds up the first load aspect of things, and which is probably the biggest benefit. The second one is that you can get access to native APIs, of course, with limitation to Cordova as a whole, but still you might get around some PWAs. But again, this is kind of where over the time the differences have shrunk a lot. What's going to, because what's happening underneath it is that, as you can probably guess from the pre-installation and installation instruction, it is actually building a native application with a web view in it. So it's pretty much like a browser that has all the stuff for your application in there and only runs in the domain of your application. You can then take it one step further and have very much Cordova specific functionality, or maybe you might want to hide some because you are only on mobile. This is where the Meteor.isMobile flag comes in, so which you can use in if statements. So that's how we can optimize things as go. But in essence, what that also means, as Jan stated before, you start building from like a mobile design and then expand onto desktop as well. So you will have to set up, Java for whatever system you use, then Android Studio. If you want, you can also use Gradle to set up for you. But from my experiences, getting Android Studio set up, make sure then you get the export paths set up properly. That can be a bit of an issue. I'll have update for Ubuntu on that. On iOS, you will have to install Xcode. Speaking of iOS, or if you want to download for iOS, so for Mac, you'll have to go through Xcode. The big thing, the big issue that I have is that, sadly, given how Mac works, if you are outside of that system, you cannot build for Mac or iOS in this. So if you are, for example, like me on Ubuntu, you can only build for Android. iOS is not available for you. So that's also why I would say a lot of developers are on Mac, especially if they deal with mobile, so that they can do both iOS and Android. So that's also something to kind of look forward, but I think that's the case with everything. So once you get that, you have the Meteor ad platform, Android, or you can also add iOS if you can, and then you can either run through emulator, or probably better, especially for Android, is to just get a device and run on device. The Android emulator has historically been pretty slow and sluggish. But it will still work if you have it all set up. I think getting it, once you get it running on your Android or emulator, you pretty much won the battle. That means you have everything is set up and everything is working correctly, and all from there on, it should be smooth sailing. There might be some issues when getting it onto the App Store. That's something that you have to prepare yourself. Most oftentimes in the past, it has been an issue of the SDK and that Meteor uses under hood, and that's always being updated. So you will, if you want to kind of get through, you either need to get into the internals, or you need to keep up to date with Meteor. So I hope everybody chooses the second option.
Maybe this is a great opportunity to share some experience when it comes to updating. This is an interesting thing, this whole updating experience, which I never had with PWA, but I had with React Native. I think one of the biggest issues I had personally, why I chose PWA in favor of Cordova at that time, was I felt it very annoying to have a second system to update the same time, to manage to update and keeping updated alongside my Meteor code base. And I still have that same issue with React Native as well, mostly because there are now these requirements from the App Store, from the Android App Store, and from the iOS Store, that you need to have at least SDK level XYZ for this year, and this is annually upgraded, so that there is this this measurement from these vendors to keep us working, wasting our time with updating. But that's an annoying part, and you can't get rid of it. And that's why I chose PWA at that time, because you don't have to manage this extra code base. You have to keep updated to target your browsers, but you don't have an extra system. So I don't know how you feel about this, but that was for me the most annoying part when targeting native.
For me, it's actually why I kind of stopped progressing, or the Cordova app, was twofold. One I mentioned, once I'm Ubuntu, I cannot get, or Windows, I cannot get into the Apple App Store. So I was like, okay, once you're actually building for native apps and Cordova as well, if you have an app on Android, you have to have app on Apple. That's just today. You cannot get around to it. So I would have to make a significant investment to get a Mac or something like that, which for me is just like, I'm not interested. I'm open source guy, Ubuntu or Linux in general. That was one thing. And second was you could say the practices of Apple specifically in regards to their app store, and when it comes to revenues and all that stuff. So that's why I can also switch more to progressive web apps, as at least for the time being, until I can figure out how to get around that.
But there's an advantage, I think, on the iOS ecosystem. There's one advantage, and that is that once you have their simulator, if it runs on their simulator, it basically runs on their devices. The Android device system is a hot mess. You can test we're testing for, you can't imagine how many devices we use to test how many emulator images I'm running on my Android emulator for this React Native app to cover this range of apps. that we need to test against. And there is still some user coming with their Oppo or ZTE device I never seen anywhere, and they have an issue. And especially the biggest issue actually we have is there are under the hood in Android there is this different scaling. So you have a certain size, but under the hood they have some kind of a different scaling factor for their DPI. And then this is why in React Native you have screen versus window. They're the two variables on that for these different sizes, and you have to get them right. So, and you have to make everything relative in order to make this really work for these different, not only screen sizes, but also for these different DPI scalings. And that's an advantage in the Apple ecosystem. You don't have to mess with these things around, because once it's just working. And I don't know how you see that. And for the PWA, you don't have this problem at all. Your browser is the source of truth, and once you stick with caniuse.com and these MDN recommendations, so if you stick to working web standards, you're really good to go, basically.
Well, that's also the benefit of Cordova in essence, because I said, in essence, Cordova is just a web browser running your application. So unless you get really into the system to get into the native apps where you need to constantly upgrade packages, you can just be pretty much happy with Cordova, and it's going to adjust the screen sizes to whatever comes across. But the screen sizes, like the one of the big ones of or like the one that got a lot of designers pulling their hairs and developers afterwards as well, was, for example, the introduction of the fold phones, so that you get where you can also have two columns of content for the same website. So that was pretty crazy.
So we've been dancing around, and I haven't played my role as moderator appropriately here, dancing around what some of the differences are in terms of the what is it? It's not exactly it's the entire pipeline, right, from start to finish in terms of building and maintaining an application in either of these paradigms. I mean, they have their challenges. I think, as if I can summarize really quickly, on the native side or the near native side, when we're using Cordova, there is this notion that you might have to resubmit to the app stores when you make an improvement to your applications. You can kind of bypass that when you're using a responsive web design PWA application and get away with it. There are, Küster, just remind me, because I don't remember if I heard it when you were saying it, and maybe you didn't say it, but I think Storyteller was very comprehensive about explaining what the path is from when you start building an app to what are the tools that you need to have on the plate in front of you in order to make that app, have the full developer kit in front of you, to getting it into an app store and then the challenges that you face with it. What is there a similar process, or is it short? I think you mentioned that you didn't want to go down that full path, right?
Yeah.
And have that experience with the rebuilds or the resubmissions. So what does the full path look like when you are?
So here's the thing. This is, on the one hand, it's an advantage, but also a disadvantage. With PWAs, you don't have a different pipeline. You just enrich your existing code base with a few files, and then you can just build your Meteor app as you do all the time. And it's delivered automatically as part of the browser. So nobody needs to call an app store or do something else. It's just part of the browser. And then there is this nice little download icon, which is very hidden for people to install this app. And here comes the downside of it. Users, or at least our users, they don't realize that this app is a PWA and they can install it. For them, it's like, app? Oh, it's an app, so I need to go to the app store. And that's what many users don't realize. And the second problem is the updating. they need to update the app. So they need to know that their app is now updated, you know? And sometimes we had the problem that it's not, the PWA is just a wrapped image. But if I change the build significantly, then they might have to uninstall the image and reinstall it from the browser. This doesn't change anything for them because it's all saved in a browser. This is just a browser sub-process launcher or something like this, but they don't realize it. They think when they delete this thing, oh my God, the app is deleted, all my stuff is deleted. So there is a fundamental issue with the user process here that they still don't understand. But your build process is the exact same as if you built your Meteor web application. So and that was one of the biggest decision factors pro PWA in 2018 for me.
So you don't have the complexity of this particular path in the pipeline that you've got the gatekeeper that you've got to go through, right? And you don't even have to worry about side loading either.
You put the complexity on the user experience in that case.
Yeah.
Exactly. What I'd like to do actually is right now I have a little diagram that I'd like to share. So I'm going to pop that up in a second here, and this will continue part of our discussion. And that part of the discussion is with regard to the user experience and the developer experience. I want to touch on that a little bit. You guys have chatted a little bit about it.
Alim, one little thing here that I want to kind of give to kind of remember as we are talking about the pipeline. Important thing about Meteor Cordova app is that there is still hot code push. So if you actually don't have to push that often into App Store, because it will just take the and get them download them in as part of the update, because internal, which is also one of the things that Apple sometimes do not like, and that sometimes comes up with within the review of when you submit the Cordova application. Yeah,
that's something to keep track of, right? Something to keep in mind. I just wanted to diagram in a very simplistic way. This is not in any way sophisticated. It's not accurate in like, you can't look at the scale and say this is where exactly it is. But when we're talking about like what your options are, right, with responsive apps, PWAs, and you've got like one side where you can have it exist outside of the App Store. The app is basically just an element in a browser, an application in a browser that we're talking about. So you don't have to go through the entire control structure, the walled gardens of these app stores in order to get an app out to somebody. Jan, you've been talking about like using Cordova, and there are other wrapper apps like Iconic and Capacitor, and I think Fred mentioned Tori is another one. I'm not sure if it's using the same things or different.
Yeah.
But Xamarin was another one of these wrapper apps at one time that was out there, and that's sort of in the middle. And so the idea is like, if you have to build native applications, you either have to use the API for directly and use the APIs and maybe build it with Java, right, for your Android applications, or use Swift or Objective-C to build your iOS applications. That requires some very technical knowledge. And of course, it also requires working with compiler flags and doing a lot of other things that you probably don't want to do. So when we take something like these wrapper apps in the middle, that allows us to get very close to what a native app experience would be. And I say very close because oftentimes there's some trade-offs in terms of what you have access to and what you can do. You can build a completely bespoke application with Swift and Objective-C and with Java for the two different platforms, but you're going to be maintaining two different code bases, and you're going to have to try to rationalize what you're going to, where your change is going to go, and whether or not that device that you're on can support the feature that you want to explore. I think the Cordova type model gives you sort of like the best of both worlds in that sense, right? It gives you a common denominator to play with, so you don't get to build a completely bespoke experience. And that's why I have this user experience area down here, right? You get higher and closer to what the app provider affords you when you speak and when you talk to it and build in the language that they support directly. And you get towards a lower fidelity when you're just using what the web gives you. Now, the thing is, this can be a little deceiving in terms of like, how it stretches out here. I think as time has gone by, responsive web apps and browsers have given you more and more access to the device features on your phones, on your iPad or your tablets or whatever. You get access now to the microphone if you want it, and to the speaker and the haptic interface itself. So as time has gone by, I think this particular low fidelity, high fidelity has been compressed somewhat. It's not entirely there, and I think that there are probably features. I don't know enough on this, but I think there are probably features that are very specific to the device that you can only get directly by building it. And of course, there is also the impact on the developer experience. If you have to learn Objective-C, or if you have to learn Java in order to build these applications, it puts a huge burden on you. And again, the tool chain from the beginning, when you're starting, all the way through how you deliver and how you actually structure a build, there's all this stuff. This is the thing that we love about Meteor, is that it takes away all the stuff that you have to build around building an app, which is typical in many, many situations, right? And so if you have to go and build your apps with native languages, you also have to worry about like how you're actually structuring, your build chain. And that is something that as you go further and further to the left, right, using your general dev skills, a lot of it gets obviated away, to the point, by the way, as Küster had pointed out, and I'm going to bring it right back to you, Küster, that the responsive web apps basically do away with much of that. Küster.
I would coin the term general dev skills not too much here. I would rather call it web dev skills, because that's the thing you mostly use is everything that isn't on a PWA is all based on web standards. So you can come from another development realm, as long as it's still in the web dev, you will be very easy to jump into that. And as opposed to when you never worked on a mobile app, you have to rethink everything. There's another thing I wanted to let you know here, and that is PWA or service workers being part of web standards are still a good thing to do for your app, because it enriches your app with certain web standards anyway. Even if users don't install your app, you can benefit of the caching, you can benefit for SEO with the web manifest and so on. So it's always a good option to incorporate these features that drive PWAs into your Meteor web app anyway. So just speaking from this perspective, and this might be a good transition. So you're building your Meteor app, and then you want to flesh it more out, you want to perfect it. You can incorporate these PWA features at any time. And if you then still need a mobile app, then you can still shift towards Cordova or to React Native. And this is maybe a very good workflow for beginners, especially, unless you know from the beginning we need a mobile app on top of this, then you might consider Cordova or React Native from the beginning.
I think this is really interesting in the sense of when we get back to the media part of this, right? When we talk about the code base, the idea that you have a single code base that you can leverage and use for different platforms is a little bit of a fiction to some degree, depending on where on this line you are, right? So if you are looking at building completely native applications and having a single code base, not going to happen at all, right? You kind of get there with Cordova, but you still have to make. Now you got to tell me this, Küster, because I'm not Küster, Storyteller, because I don't have a ton of experience here. But there's still some, massaging you need to do with your code base, depending on the platform that you're publishing to. Yes?
Yes, at the minimum, you need to put in, your icons and, kind of like the graphics around and add in additional settings, but that is not much different from, from PWA as well.
Mm. Do you have to consider, the do you have to do any kind of conditional programming depending on the underlying operating system?
No, unless you have like very specific, functionality that you are touching.
Okay.
Uh,
So things that might be,
other
yeah.
than that, that's actually what the premise of Cordova is. You just write with one API and it will work
Right.
both on iOS and Android.
So this gets you would probably say about 95% of the way then with a single code base, right? Or 98%, something
Yeah,
like that.
again, depends on your on your functionality. If you are
Yeah.
a very specific map app, or have very specific things that tie into the native
Mhm.
things,
Yeah.
then things might get a bit more complicated. But if you don't have that, then that will get you there pretty much even more than that.
And you would say on the responsive web app portion of it, Küster, it gets you almost 100% there, right? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. The other thing I wanted to point out to people that might be thinking about like which model to go with if they're thinking about building applications is, your time to market, your development costs, right? In terms of like looking at this, I think if you're going to be doing any kind of native application building where you're going to be supporting more than one platform, you got to have time and you got to have that skill set in order to be able to execute on it, right? And obviously, your testing is going to be more complicated and it's going to be harder. You want to speak to that in terms of Cordova? Is it and what's the delta you think between like, the building with Cordova? I guess you have to have some specialized knowledge about Cordova in order to do that. With a responsive web app, you're just using your basic web skills, correct?
Yes, but with Cordova, if you're lucky, you can just follow the guide and the setup steps, and you don't really have to, at least initially, to build the initial app and all that stuff. You don't really have
Right.
to have anything special. I had but there are certain things that you have to kind of take into account. For example, I had to go into my BIOS to enable virtualization, and it can be very annoying very quickly.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of work that you've got to do there. Some of it, including like, making some changes to your BIOS, might be beyond some other people's capabilities. So it's so again, like you got to kind of figure out where you're playing, what you're playing with in terms of time and money, and then what would be the better developer experience and user experience for the customer. So I think there's a balance and a bunch of internal calculations you've got to make about like which route you take in all of this. I don't want to beat this to death because we've kind of exhausted this. I think we've said as much as really we probably should be saying about this at this point. What do you guys feel? Do you guys think it's a good time to wrap?
Yeah, we could wrap up.
All right, guys. So if you have some thoughts, viewpoints on this, let's hear them. And by the way, this segment was brought to you by. It was, and we were really bad in not getting this up, but it was brought to you by. That's right. Thank you. By Galaxy. Galaxy is a hosting service natively built for Meteor applications. It will be supporting JavaScript and Python applications close in the future. Use dispatches-60 as your coupon code to get, what is it? Is it $60 worth?
$60, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't done so before and you haven't taken advantage of this, go ahead, give it a try, put your apps up there. I think you'll enjoy the experience. They've been working really hard to include more and more features. There is now MongoDB hosted databases in Galaxy. Is there Redis there right now? Do we know?
It's in works. Last time I have heard about that.
Okay. So check it out. It's been changing. They've been making improvements. They've been adding to it. I don't know if anybody from the team wants to pop in here. So, it looks like Gabriel Gruba. I always mess this up. Was here earlier today. Gabriel is a former open source developer at Meteor Software who's gone on to work at, I believe he's at Discourse now. So it's great seeing him back here. So check out Galaxy. We have the coupon code and instructions on how to go about using it down below on the streamer, and take advantage of that. It's our gift to you. All right. And with that, I think we've got
have
a couple
something
of
else.
Resources, right?
Yes. Speaking of things to check out, there is a post from Per Bergland, apologies, talking about how to improve build server caching, pretty much how to improve your performance on continuous integration using Prepare app and some other things, also referencing here Zodern's blog post. So if if you're running continuous integration servers for Meteor, definitely check this out. See what you can integrate into your pipeline. And with that, Jan, what do you have ready for us?
I would like to give you a little teaser for what's upcoming in the what we're uploading in the next days. And I talked a lot on PWA today, and I checked out in the past days, is it still possible to enrich an existing Meteor app or a new Meteor 3.0 project to become a PWA, as I did in 2018 and in my 2020 article I published, and I found out it's actually not that hard. So I will give you a little tour on creating a Blaze app and making this a PWA. This whole thing will be about 10 minutes, all included. And so stay tuned, subscribe, hit the subscribe button, because then you will get notified when this video is finally published. And then you can immediately grab your IDE and your terminal and just follow the tutorial and have your Meteor app PWA ready out of the box. That's the goal of this tutorial. I hope to see you soon there. And with that, I will get back to Alim.
Yeah, so you're talking about helping people mobilize their applications, so to speak.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, dad joke, right? Anyway, we've got one other reminder that we want to make sure that you keep in mind, and that's because our friend is heading to Japan. Storyteller, tell the people what's going to happen.
So let's see, in about 10 days, 11 days, no, 10 days, I'm flying to Japan to get over my jet lag, because on October 28th to 29th, there is Open Source Summit hosted by the Linux Foundation, together with the OpenJS Foundation and all the other foundation under their umbrella. And I will be speaking there. Let me scroll here to Tuesday, October 29th, and I'll be speaking about surviving project abandonment, MeteorJS case study. So I'll be going into the history of Meteor, where it ended, how it ended, where it is right now, and what can we learn from that to hopefully make other and our as well communities more resilient in case of another project abandonment or other issues that might arise. So that will be also later on available on the official YouTube of Linux Foundation as well.
Awesome. I think we're all looking forward to seeing the recording if it does happen. But if you can actually make it there and you can show up, I think you'll have a great time hanging out with Jan. I always enjoy my time when I see Jan here. I spent a few years with him when he was part of the New York leadership community for Meteor New York meetup. In any case, I think that's our show, guys. And with that, I just want to remind people that, thank you for coming. I don't know if I'm going to remind you about anything there, but I do want to point out that next week, we're going to be covering change streams. So with that, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
See you.